Hey everybody, I'm here today with my Ram 1500 Hemi 5.7 liter with the ticking noise on the engine block. Coming from the manifold, everybody knows about that by now if you're listening to this video. My solution was to go out and buy some headers. Took off the original manifolds, got some headers from AFE, thinking, well, that'll fix the problem because the AFE headers are single pipes going to each manifold. But in fact, they are not. They are single pipes, but they attach to a plate. And that plate has significant warp. So this is my second time taking this off. The first time I did it, it started leaking probably within 200 miles after I installed it. The next time, another 200 miles after I installed it. And each time I've been trying to get the bolts tighter, and the warp does nothing but get worse. How bad is the warp? Well, let's take a look. Down here, I have bolted, well, actually, let me give credit for AFE. I told them about the warp issue, and they said, no problem, we'll send you a new set, free of charge. So they have now sent me the new set. I'm going to install them, but not before I try and modify them to prevent this issue. So what I've done is I took the old manifold, on the warped one, on the right, and I bolted it up to the mating one from the new box, okay? And then on the back here, I've attached a bolt connecting the two together, so I'm holding the back edge flat. And look at the amount of warp that there is on those two manifolds. The one on the, that is just insane. I mean, you can pull it down, but it'll start to leak within 50, 100 miles. How big is that gap? Well, here, I got a half-inch drive extension. I can put that in here. I can move it all the way up to there. I mean, that is insane. So, what am I going to do to fix this problem? Well, my thought is, because I'm convinced now there's no way I can tighten those bolts enough to prevent it from warping, and even getting to the bolts is extremely difficult, as I'll show you in a moment with the tool that you're going to need. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this old manifold and I'm going to put a cut. And that cut's going to extend down between the two pipes. So between here and here, I'm going to put a cut all the way through here, through that plate using an abrasive wheel. And I'm going to do it for each one of those pipes. And then I'm going to see if I can bolt those down more easily, because now the stress of the plate isn't there to hold it warped. It's just each pipe that's going to have to be pulled in. And hopefully that'll fix the problem. If it looks, and the way I'm going to test it is I'm going to bolt it down to a rigid surface and make sure that I can, in fact, get it flat. If I can, I'm going to take that new one over there and I'm going to do the same thing before I even mount it. I'm going to put slits in there so I can get each one of those pipes floating freely, so that when I bolt it on, the plate is not going to try and pull the whole set out of kilter. All right. So which tools did I need to get this off? Because I know a lot of people, it's not a simple task, and a lot of people have talked about it but didn't really show the tools required. So let me show you what I've got here. I've got you need the pry bar for getting off your little jack nuts and everything, for getting off your wheel well. Okay, so your little Christmas trees there, you get those off. The most valuable tool you're going to need in this collection is going to be your 10 millimeter flex head wrench. And look at that. I've lost mine. Here. No, here it is. All right. This is the most valuable tool you need, because the bolts are if you buy the AFE header, the bolts are nearly impossible to get to. So this will allow you to get access to it. And even then, your maximum torque you're going to get on those bolts is at the end of this wrench with your two fingers, because the clearance fit is so close and there's literally no room to get your hands in there. So you're going to need a 10 millimeter flex head. You also need a 1/4 inch drive, okay, with a universal and a 10 millimeter socket on it. And it wouldn't help either if you had a little flex drive. I don't have a flex drive here. I had a little stiff, it's like a wire sort of thing that you can use to kind of go around corners. Sometimes I use that just for getting the bolt started. The other thing I want to mention is tapping the holes. Get yourself a good quality tap and tap out the motor mount block. Just chase the holes clean. I'm not saying you're cutting the threads. Just chase the holes clean, because when you're putting the bolts in, you're going to be putting them in with just your fingertips. And if there's any binding at all, you're not going to get it in. The other thing that you're going to have to do with the AFE, because that thing does not have clearance for the stock bolts, you're going to have to buy yourself some new bolts. The ones I bought are 12 point, so that I can get very small amounts of turn with a wrench to get them in, because you're going to need that amount of variability in order to get those things in there. The other thing you need to do is cut them off a little bit shorter. So go to McMaster Car. You can find these things. They're about $2.50 a piece. Find these things. If you can get the right length, great. I bought ones that were too long and I cut them off shorter to be the right length. These will be shorter than your stock bolts, but that's okay. They seem to be fine. Why do I say that? Because if we look at my manifold here, this is my gasket that came out of it. This is the cylinder that was leaking. This is the right side front cylinder right up the top here. And when I originally tightened this down, thinking I could pull a warp out, I tightened the back ones first and I worked to the front, okay? One end to the other. I didn't do it like you're probably supposed to do it, which is every other bolt from the center out. Because I was trying to get that end pulled in, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go out here and work on that end because that's got the most amount of room and the greatest leverage of that effect. But when I took it apart, those bolts over there, one of them was totally, this one here, that bolt right there was totally loose, and yet it wasn't leaking. So it's not that you can't get it tight enough with your fingers in that little wrench. It's just that the manifold is warping so badly, you can't possibly get it tightened up to prevent it from warping. So anyway, that's my take on this. The right side is definitely easier to get off. Probably took me an hour to get that off of there. Of course, I've done it 3 times now, so I'm faster at it. The left side is a little bit more difficult because you got to move a couple of things having to do with the steering. It's not significantly more difficult, but it is. All right, so that's it for now. I'll tell you what it looks like when I get done. Okay. Geez, it's time like these when I wish I had a chop saw, but I don't. All I've got is a cheap Porter cable with an abrasive blade, but I cut the slits through the manifold points like this, and I can already tell, I mean, a lot of the warp is already gone. I'm going to bolt this thing together to the previous one like I did before, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, I've now bolted the other end together again, just like I did before. I've put the two side by side, and you can see I've already eliminated at least half the warp. And look at what I can do with my bare hands. I can pull it in flat with one hand. So this is completely the thing that needs to be done with this design, is they just need to basically slit those things so that the pipes can flex a little bit and let things sit flat like they're supposed to. When you're doing your chasing the holes, remember, you're not cutting new threads, you're just chasing the holes, just to get the gunk out of them. You're using an M8 by 1.25 millimeter tap. You just get a square-nosed one like that for bottom tapping. Works great. If you want to get some cutting fluid, you can do that. Any sort of cutting fluid. There's some green stuff made for aluminum. That works really nice as well. But again, you're just chasing the holes. Second, on those bolts that I was using, these are McMaster Car bolts again. They're 12 point M8 by 1.25. I bought them too long, so I just sawed them off with a hacksaw and then ground down the ends to make sure that thread is nice and clean so that it doesn't bung up the hole when you go in. And the cut length was cut down to 1 inch. You see that? 1 inch. Okay, let's go ahead and get started on this. Okay, next night, picking up where we left off, I've now taken the holes and elongated the holes. As you can see, they've been elongated a little bit. I'm going to see if that's enough to give me the space that I need. And then I've also filed out these slots a little bit, as you can see, to give me some space on the top as well. And what did I use? Well, just a simple round file and a flat file. I did kind of auger the holes out a little bit with a drill. At this point, I don't care what I do to this thing as long as it works. I also took the, using a pair of tin snips, I cut out the slots on the bottom of the gasket only. I'll still leave the holes on the top. The reason I cut the bottoms out on those holes is because I figured out I can get that manifold in there after loading the bolts, preloading the bolts into the holes. I can slide that manifold in from the top and then put in the gasket next. So let's give it a try. You'll know whether or not you got the holes correctly ground out, because if you did, or the slots anyway, the manifold should just drop right in there. So let's just give this a try. All right. Now this came out really easy when I did it before. How you position this end is important. There we go. There we go. There we go. It was right in there. Okay. First thing, manifold in place. Next thing, put your gasket in. Okay, so I got my gasket in. Okay, now it's just a matter of putting in the other bolts, seeing if they fit. Very important. Loosely attach everything, including your tailpipe joint. Everything is loose at first. Then tighten your tailpipe joint first, because if you get that manifold on crooked, you'll never get that to seal up. I made that mistake the first time. So tighten this first, then come back and finish up on these. Another thing I forgot to mention was an extra floor jack. I mean, you know, you've got your standard jacks up here to hold your truck up and get it up. But this one here, all it's doing is acting like a third person or a second person, and it's lifting up on the bottom of that tailpipe just a little bit. I mean, the position of that tailpipe makes so much difference when you're trying to get that manifold in up here. I mean, if it's just down 1/8 of an inch too low or 1/8 of an inch too high, the bolts just won't go in the holes. It's got to be just right in order for it to work. Now, it helped a little bit that I drilled these holes out and rounded them out a little bit. But if you're trying to do this manifold without making these mods, it's that tailpipe's got to be lined up perfectly loose in order for things to go together. Apply a little bit of anti-seize on them bolts too. This is a high temp copper anti-seize from Permatex. All you need is a little bit on the bolts so that they don't ever seize up in that block. We can't overemphasize the importance of getting that anti-seize compound on the bolts. The tailpipe bolts especially too. It doesn't hurt to have too much, okay? Just don't put on too little. You don't want these things rusting up. I've got the first bolt installed at the front of the manifold. That went in really easy. Now remember, these are just finger tight. Finger tight. I got the second bolt installed at the back of the manifold. Again, finger tight. Now I got the two hard ones. Look at it. Snuck in there behind the pipe. And this one here too, stuck in behind the pipe. Those are going to be buggers to get in there. I usually use like a three-prong gripper thing to kind of get it in the hole, and then just work it and work it to try and get it started. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, everyone. This is my 3-prong gripper. You know, it's one of these little cable thingies. 3 fingers on the end. I'm going to use that to try and get those bolts in there. Let's try. As you can see, I can get it to that one pretty easily, that first hole. And then you got to use it to get way back to that other one and then fiddle with it until you get it started. It is not easy. Here's my 3-prong gripper. You know, it's one of these little gadgets here, Harbor Freight job. And we're going to use it to get that one bolt in that's behind that pipe. And we're going to feed it from underneath. We're going to go up here, stick her in there, and then we're going to see if we can twist it and get it to start. If you're lucky, it will. All right. All I could do was get the bolt in the hole. You can push the top of the manifold. There's a heat shield on the top of that thing. You can push it up. You can sneak your fingers in there, sneak your fingers underneath, and actually get the bolt turning. And I actually got it in the hole. And it started. Well, I got the last one in. Turns out, let's see, where is it? It's up under here. You can't see it. There it is. Turns out I can get my fingers in there too, so I didn't even need my three-prong gripper. Well, actually I did. I needed the three-prong gripper to get that one in the hole, but then to screw it, I had to use my fingers. This one here, I just got it with my fingers. So it's doable. All right, we've got the manifold in, the tailpipe connected, and you can see, and here there's just a little bit of slop there. So we're gonna tighten these bolts up first, get them pretty snug. Not really, really tight, but snug, okay? Okay, we're now gonna tighten up those bolts on the top. And now you can see why you need that flex wrench. It's the only way you can sneak in there underneath the heat shield and underneath everything to get in there and tighten those bolts up. And that's all you got to tighten it up. And this is an easy one. Wait till we get back to those back there. They are really difficult. But you can do it. And the only way you can do it is with that wrench. 10mm flex head ratchet. Okay. This is absolutely the hardest bolt to get to. You can see that flex head is literally reaching around behind the pipe. Under the, through the heat shield around the pipe. All you can do is put your finger on the bottom side to push the open end of the wrench against the head, and then you can get that bolt tight. And this is why I suggested getting the 12-point M8 by 1.25mm bolts from McMaster, and then getting this flex socket, because that is the only way you're going to get those bolts in there. Okay, and here's the rear bolt on the top. Again, very difficult to get to. You'll have to put your hand way in the back over here. Don't let it fall off, and you'll have to move it up. You only get about 3 or 4 clicks at a time, but it'll go in. All right, now the bottom ones. Those are pretty tough too. All right, we're looking from underneath the truck. We've got 3 of the lower manifold bolts on the right, in the middle, and on the left, the far left. And getting to that far left one is pretty tough because you can't really get your hand in there very easily, because in the way is this plate right here. That plate right here. Okay, that last bolt way up there, that is a bugger to get to. So what I've got here is a 10mm socket. I've got like a 4-inch flex drive, which is like a cable, and then a bunch of extensions coming down to my ratchet down here. So anyway, you're gonna need that in order to get the bolt at least all the way in there. Then once you get it in, you won't be able to tighten it with this because you can't torque it much, but you can stick your flex head wrench up in there and do the last couple turns with a flex head wrench. But yeah, this is what you're going to need to get it screwed in. Final torquing. This upper one, this is the front upper, right? And that bolt there, and the lower one down below, I managed to get to with a universal 1/4-inch universal drive. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, 1/4-inch universal drive. I might try and get the flex wrench in there too, and just see if I get a little extra torque on it. But you don't need to over torque these that much now, because each one of these is floating independently. I mean, you saw earlier that you can just flex it with your fingers, so it shouldn't take that much force to keep this thing sealed up. And I'll probably reuse this wrench combination on that lower bolt that we just were looking at earlier. The 1/4-inch drive worked pretty good. That 1/4-inch flex universal, again with the 10mm on the end. worked pretty good for the second bolt from the front, or no, third bolt from the front as well. Still got to go back and get that one tightened up, but this one here I got access with this wrench combination. All right, we're done. We've got everything tightened up, top and bottom. Got the tailpipe tightened up. Let's fire it up, see if it makes any noise. Sounds good? Nice and quiet? I think it's a success. I'll have to report back after 1,000 miles.